The morning at the hospital began like any other, busy and full of noise. But no one expected what would happen before the first hour passed. The sliding doors opened and closed non-stop as people came in with small injuries, coughs, or worried looks on their faces. Nurses moved from one station to another, trying to keep up with the rush. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, mixed with the faint scent of coffee from the staff room. Everyone was moving with purpose. But no one noticed the young woman who quietly stepped inside until it was almost too late. She walked in slowly, as if every step felt heavier than the one before. Her name was Lily, and she looked like she had come to the hospital on her own, without anyone to support her. She pressed one hand against her chest while the other clung to the strap of her small bag. Her breathing was quick and uneven, but she tried to hide it. People around her were talking, filling out forms or staring at their phones. No one watched her closely enough to see how pale her face had become at the far end of the room. Dr. Arjun, an emergency doctor known for being both calm and sharp, was checking over a patient chart. Even though he seemed absorbed in his work, he always kept an eye on the room, ready for anything unexpected. It was this habit that made him look up at just the right moment. That was when he noticed Lily. At first, he could only see the tension in her shoulders and the strange way she held her breath. She stood near the reception desk as though waiting for someone to call her forward. But then her eyelids fluttered, her knees trembled, and her body swayed like she might fall. Her fingers curled against her chest as though trying to hold something inside. She tried to take another breath, but it came out strained and thin before anyone else reacted. Before the receptionist could even push her chair back, Lily collapsed onto the waiting room floor. A sudden gasp passed through the room as people stood up from their seats. A man dropped the clipboard he had been holding. A child clung to her mother's arm. Someone shouted for help, their voice shaking with fear. The noise rippled across the room like a shockwave. But Dr. Arjun was already moving. He rushed toward her with quick and steady steps, calling out to a nurse nearby. His voice was firm but controlled, the kind of voice that made others feel safer even in a frightening moment. When he reached Lily, he knelt beside her and checked for a response. Her face had turned a worrying shade, her lips slightly swollen, and her breath short and rapid as though she were trying to pull air through a straw. "Lily, can you hear me?" he asked, even though she couldn't answer. Her body shook slightly, and her hands twitched. Her throat made a soft, tight sound with every inhale, like she was struggling against something her own body was doing to her. A nurse hurried over with a small kit while another cleared the space around them. People stepped back, watching with fear and confusion. A few whispered to each other, trying to understand what was happening. Some looked scared to even breathe too loudly, as though any little sound might make things worse. Dr. Arjun checked her pulse. It was fast and weak. Her airway was swelling, and he could tell immediately that she was having a severe allergic reaction. It's a kind that becomes deadly within minutes if left untreated. There was no time to ask questions or wait for formal paperwork. There was only time to act. The nurse opened the emergency kit, placing it beside him. He grabbed the epinephrine injector, his hands steady as he prepared it. He had trained for moments like this, but training doesn't calm your heart when someone's life is slipping away right in front of you. Still, he focused only on what needed to be done. She needed help now. He quickly administered the injection into her thigh. It was a fast, practiced motion, but one that carried weight. Even though he knew it was the right call, there was always a risk, especially when acting without a full medical history. But hesitation would have cost her far more. Within seconds, her breathing shifted, though not yet improving. Her chest rose unevenly, but her airway was still dangerously tight. Her body trembled more violently now, reacting to both the allergic shock and the medication working its way through her system. "Let's get her to a treatment room," he said. His voice low but urgent. Two nurses moved quickly, helping him lift her onto a stretcher. The crowd silently watched as she was rushed down the hallway. Some looked shaken. Others looked relieved that help had arrived. But all eyes were fixed on the woman who had gone from standing to fighting for her life in less than a minute. As they wheeled her through the corridor, the fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting faint shadows across the walls. The hospital noises outside the room blurred together, the rolling of carts, The beeping of machines, the soft calls from other patients, but inside the moment. All that mattered was Lily's struggling breath. They entered a treatment room where more equipment was waiting. A nurse quickly connected her to monitors that tracked her heart rate and oxygen levels. Both numbers were far from normal. Her heart was racing. Her oxygen levels had dropped so low that the monitor beeped sharply in warning. Dr. Arjun adjusted her position, tilted her head slightly, and monitored her airway closely. Ready to intervene again if needed? He could feel the pressure of time, every second heavy and loud. He kept checking her reaction to the injection, hoping to see improvement, but her body fought back in a way that made everything more tense. Her breaths remained shallow. Her eyes fluttered as though she was drifting in and out of consciousness. Her hands grasped at the blanket beneath her, and her face showed discomfort mixed with fear. Even though she wasn't fully awake, another nurse entered with additional emergency equipment. They didn't know if a second dose might be needed, but they prepared for it just in case. "What's her chart say?" he asked. "We don't have her chart yet," the nurse replied. She didn't check in before collapsing. It made things harder. Without any history, they didn't know if she had allergies, past reactions, heart conditions, or medications she was taking. But none of that changed the fact that they had done what was necessary. Saving her life mattered more than anything written on paper. Dr. Arjun kept monitoring her closely. Slowly, small signs of improvement began to appear, not enough to relax, but enough to keep hope steady. Her throat movement eased, her oxygen level climbed a little, and the color in her lips started to come back. "Come on," he murmured softly, almost like he was talking to someone he knew. "Stay with us. You're going to be okay." Minutes felt like long stretches of time, but each improvement encouraged the team. One nurse adjusted the airflow, another checked the 4-line they had inserted. Everything that could be done was being done. Finally, her breathing eased just enough to break the tension in the room. Her body stopped trembling as much, and her chest rose more steadily. The monitor's sharp warning beeps softened into a more normal rhythm. The danger wasn't entirely gone, but the immediate crisis had passed. A nurse exhaled loudly. Realizing she had been holding her breath, Dr. Arjun sat back slightly, though he didn't fully relax. He knew all too well how quickly these situations could change again. He couldn't walk away yet. Once Lily was stable enough, the team began preparing to contact her family, whoever they were, while continuing to monitor her vitals. She looked peaceful for a moment, though pale and exhausted. The hospital went back to its usual sounds outside the room. But inside, everything felt quieter, calmer, lighter. No one in that room knew the unexpected emotional storm that would come later, or how deeply this moment would affect everyone involved. All they knew was that a life had been saved thanks to fast action, teamwork, and the instincts of a doctor who refused to hesitate when every second mattered. For now, that was enough. The first hour after Lily was moved into the treatment room felt like a long stretch of quiet tension. The emergency had passed, but the room still carried the weight of what had happened. Machines beeped softly, tracking her heartbeat and breathing. The nurses who had rushed around moments earlier now moved with calmer steps. But they stayed close, checking on her every few minutes. No one wanted to assume she was out of danger yet. Allergic reactions were unpredictable, and this one had nearly taken her life. Dr. Arjun remained near her bedside, watching her vitals and the small changes in her breathing. He did not leave the room, even when one of the nurses told him he could take a short break. He simply shook his head. "Not yet," he said quietly. He had made the decision to act quickly, and now he wanted to make sure the treatment continued to work the way it should. Lily lay still, her breaths steady but shallow. Her face had regained some color, though she looked drained, almost like someone who had been running for miles. Her hair was a little messy from when she collapsed, and her hand twitched slightly every so often. She was still unconscious, caught somewhere between rest and a deep, frightening memory her body would probably never forget. One of the nurses, a gentle woman named Tara, came back into the room with a clipboard. She looked at the doctor with a soft smile. "Her oxygen level is rising. Slow, but steady. That's a good sign," he nodded. "We'll keep monitoring. I want to make sure her airway stays open." She reacted pretty severely. Do we know what caused it yet? She asked. He shook his head again. Not yet. She came in alone. No chart. No family with her. We'll have to ask when she wakes up. They both glanced at Lily, who seemed peaceful in that moment, as though resting in a world far away from the machines and lights around her. Outside the room, the hospital continued with its usual rhythm. People hurried down the corridor, nurses pushed carts with supplies, and faint conversations echoed through the hall. Life inside the building moved on as usual, but the quiet inside Lily's room felt separate from it all, like a brief pause in time. After a while, one of the nurses returned with a small stack of paperwork. We found her bag, she said. There's an ID card, but no medical info. No allergy list either. Any emergency contacts? Dr. Arjun asked. The nurse flipped through the papers. Just a phone number for a coworker. No family listed. He sighed softly. That would make things more complicated later. Most people had someone listed to call in moments like these, someone who could answer questions or give history. But Lily had come in alone, and even her paperwork looked like she lived that way too. We'll call the coworker, he said, but only once she's stable enough. They can wait a bit longer. Right now, she needs us. The nurse nodded and left the room. Time passed slowly as Lily's breathing improved. Every few minutes, her chest lifted with a little more ease. The swelling in her throat had gone down just enough that she no longer fought for every inhale. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress steady, visible progress. Finally, she moved. It was a small movement, just a shift of her hand. Her fingers curled gently, as if she was trying to grasp onto something. Then her eyelids trembled, the way someone might slowly wake from a heavy sleep. Her breathing changed too, becoming slightly uneven for a moment before settling again. She's coming around. Tara whispered from beside the monitor. Dr. Arjun stepped closer, lowering his voice. Lily, can you hear me? She didn't open her eyes fully at first. Her brows tightened a little, the way someone reacts when they don't understand where they are. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to speak. But her throat was too dry and too sore to let out more than a faint sound. It's all right, he said gently. You're safe. You're in the hospital. You had a severe allergic reaction, but we've stabilized you. Her eyes opened just a little dark, unfocused, confused. She blinked slowly, trying to piece things together. She looked from the ceiling lights to the wires around her, then to the doctor standing near her bedside. Her breath hitched, not in fear, but in exhaustion. She wasn't strong enough yet to ask questions or even hold her eyes open for long. After a few seconds, she drifted back into a light sleep. She'll wake fully soon, the nurse said softly. Yes, the doctor replied. Let her rest for now. He stepped aside, letting her breathing slow again into a steady, comforting pattern. A while later, another nurse entered the room with a chart. Her coworker answered the phone. She said they were surprised she was at the hospital. They said she hadn't mentioned feeling sick or taking anything new. That doesn't help much, he said, but we'll talk to her when she wakes up. He knew that allergic reactions didn't always come with warnings. Sometimes they hit out of nowhere, a bite, a sip of something, even a smell in the air. Without more information, it was impossible to say what caused hers. The afternoon sunlight began to filter through a small window near the ceiling. It wasn't bright, but it offered a warm, comforting glow to the room. The chaos from earlier felt far away now. Even Lily seemed calmer, her breathing soft and steady. After several hours, she stirred again. This time, she opened her eyes fully. She looked around, confused but present. Her eyes rested on the doctor standing nearby. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. You're awake. That's good. How are you feeling? She swallowed hard. Her throat still hurt. Tired. She whispered. That's normal. You had a severe reaction. You collapsed in the waiting room. Do you remember what happened? She frowned slightly, trying to recall. I felt dizzy. My chest hurt. I tried to ask for help, but you couldn't breathe, he finished, gently. You were in trouble. We had to act quickly. She looked down at the blanket covering her legs, absorbing this. A faint tremble moved through her fingers. "Did you know you had any allergies?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "I've never had something like that before." "Did you eat anything unusual? Or come into contact with anything different today?" She thought for a long moment before shaking her head. "No, everything was normal. We'll run some tests later," he said. "For now, just focus on resting. Your body went through a lot." She nodded slightly. Her eyes softened as she looked at him again. There was something strange in her expression, a mix of gratitude, confusion, and something deeper she couldn't quite name yet. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," he replied gently. "We're here to help." But she seemed to want to say more, even though her voice was too weak for long sentences. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment. Full of questions that she couldn't yet form into words, he stepped back to give her space. And she closed her eyes again, exhausted, as the hours continued. Lily's condition improved steadily. Her breathing returned to a more natural pace, and she could speak more clearly. Nurses came in and out, checking her vitals and bringing her water. Every time she woke, she looked a little stronger, a little more aware, but she also looked thoughtful, as though something weighed heavily on her mind, something she wasn't ready to share yet. At one point, when the room was quiet and she was lying awake, she glanced at the 4 in her arm, then at the machines around her. Her fingers brushed lightly over the blanket as she whispered to herself, "I didn't expect to be here today." The truth was, she had come to the hospital for something smaller, simple checkup she had been putting off. She never imagined she would end up fighting for her life in the waiting room, and she definitely hadn't expected that someone she had never met before would be the reason she was still breathing as the day went on. The staff noticed little things about her, how she flinched at sudden noises, how she rubbed her hands together when she felt nervous, how her eyes filled with worry when she woke unexpectedly. They didn't know her story yet, but they could tell she carried something heavy inside her. Later in the evening, when everything seemed calm, she looked at the doctor again with a strange expression. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't simple either. Almost like she was searching for something, understanding maybe, or reassurance. No one knew yet how emotional the next day would become, or the surprising turn things would take. For now, all anyone cared about was the fact that she was alive, recovering and slowly coming back to herself, but beneath her quiet, tired smile, a storm was already forming, one that no one in the hospital could have predicted. The next morning arrived quietly. The kind of morning where the hospital felt almost peaceful for a short moment before the rush of the day began. Light filtered in through the small window near the ceiling, casting a soft glow across the room where Lily slept. Her breathing was steady, her face relaxed, and for a while, everything seemed calm, but peace never lasts long in a hospital. A soft knock on the door brought her out of sleep. She blinked several times, adjusting to the bright lights and the sounds of the hallway outside. A nurse stepped in, smiling kindly. "Good morning," the nurse said gently. "Did you sleep well?" Lily rubbed her eyes and tried to sit up. I think so." Her voice sounded stronger than the night before, but still soft. "That's good. The doctor will be in to check on you soon. Do you need anything?" "No, thank you," Lily murmured. The nurse nodded and stepped out, leaving Lily alone in the quiet room. She looked around slowly, taking in the equipment, the IV stand, the monitor that beeped softly every few seconds. She touched the blanket, her mind filled with memories from the previous day. The collapse, the struggle to breathe, the blurry flashes of faces and lights. But one memory stood out the most. Dr. Arjun leaning over her, his voice calm but firm, his hands moving quickly to save her. She remembered hearing him speak, not the words, but the tone. She remembered a sense of safety, even in the middle of fear. She sat quietly for a few minutes. Lost in thought, the door opened again, and this time it was him. Dr. Arjun stepped inside with his chart in hand, but his expression softened when he saw her awake. "Good morning, Lily. How are you feeling today?" She looked at him for a moment before answering. "Better, I think." "It's good to hear," he said, approaching her bedside. "You had a very serious reaction yesterday. We were worried for a while, but you pulled through." She nodded slowly, but her eyes didn't meet his. Something in her expression had changed. Yesterday she looked confused and frightened, but today she looked tense, almost guarded. He began checking the monitors and her vitals, keeping his tone gentle. "We're going to keep you here a little longer, just to make sure you're fully stable. You may feel tired or sore. That's normal after what you experienced." She didn't respond at first. Instead, she watched his movements carefully, almost nervously, he noticed. "Is something wrong?" he asked softly. She took a slow breath, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. "You gave me an injection yesterday, right?" "Yes," he said. "You were having a severe allergic reaction. Your airway was closing. You didn't have much time." Her throat tightened, though not from the reaction this time. "Did I say it was okay?" He paused, surprised by the question. "You were unconscious. We had to act quickly to save your life." She swallowed hard, staring at her hands. "But you didn't ask me?" He tried to understand where the sudden tension was coming from. "Lily, you couldn't breathe. You collapsed. If we had waited, if we had tried to get permission first, you wouldn't be here now." Her chest rose and fell in a shaky breath. "I know you saved me," she whispered. "I know that. But I didn't get to choose anything. I didn't get to say what I wanted." Her voice wavered, and suddenly her eyes filled with something he didn't expect. Real, deep hurt. He softened his voice. "I understand this is overwhelming. What happened was sudden, and you didn't have control. That can feel scary." She shook her head slowly. "It's not just that." He waited, letting her take her time. After a long silence, she looked up at him with eyes that seemed to hold years of pain. "This wasn't the first time something happened to me in a hospital. And last time, no one listened to me. Something went wrong. Really wrong. And ever since then, I get scared when doctors make choices without telling me." Her hands trembled. She tried to hide it, but it was clear. He nodded gently. Suddenly, her reaction made sense. Fear from the past had collided with the emergency of yesterday, creating confusion and emotional pain. "I'm sorry you went through that," he said quietly. "No one should have to experience something that makes them fear the very people meant to help them." She looked down again. "Yesterday when I woke up, I was grateful. Really grateful. But then later, the more I thought about it, the more scared I felt. Like I was reliving what happened before." Her voice cracked slightly. "I know you were doing your job. I know you saved my life. But my mind keeps telling me I didn't get a say again." He sat down in the chair beside the bed, lowering his posture so he could speak to her at eye level. "Thank you for telling me," he said softly. "What happened to you matters. Your feelings matter. I want you to know that nothing yesterday was done without reason. We acted to protect you, not to take away your control." She blinked back sudden tears, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I don't want to seem ungrateful. It all came back so fast. You don't need to apologize," he assured her. "Fear doesn't follow rules. It shows up when it wants to. What you're feeling is real." She closed her eyes tightly for a moment, as if trying to steady herself. I wish I didn't feel this way. I wish I could just say thank you and mean it without all the fear." He nodded slowly. "You survived something terrifying yesterday. Your mind is still processing it. Give yourself time. No one expects you to feel perfectly fine right away." Her shoulders softened slightly, but she still looked troubled. He continued speaking gently. "If it helps, I can walk you through everything that happens, step by step, so you understand what we did and why. You deserve to know. You deserve to feel safe." She hesitated, then nodded faintly. "Okay. I think that would help." He spent the next several minutes explaining the process, speaking slowly and clearly. He described how she collapsed, how fast her breathing declined, and why they had no time to wait for consent. He explained each medical decision with care, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. As he talked, she listened intently. At times she frowned, at times she nodded, and at times her eyes softened, slowly letting go of the fear she had been holding. When he finished, she took a deep breath, calmer than before. I understand now, she said quietly. I'm glad, he replied. But the room wasn't silent for long. There was still something restless in her expression, something unsettled. She looked at him with a mix of conflict and vulnerability. I know you did the right thing, but I still feel scared. Not of you, just of everything that happened. It's normal, he said. Our minds hold on to fear even when we know the facts. It takes time to let it go. Her eyes filled with tears against small ones, quiet ones, the kind that fall not because of sadness alone, but because of exhaustion. Do you want someone to talk to? He asked gently. A counselor? Or maybe someone you trust? She shook her head. I don't really have anyone. The way she said it made the room feel heavier. He didn't push further. Instead, he let the silence settle in a comforting wake, warm, unforced. After a long moment, she spoke again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Did you stay in the room last night? He looked slightly surprised. Yes, I stayed for a while. I wanted to make sure your condition stabilized. Her expression softened in a way that made her look younger, more fragile. Why? Because you were in a critical state, he said. And because I care about my patients. She stared at him for a moment, as if trying to decide whether she believed him. But something about his tone, his steady presence, made her feel safe. You didn't have to stay, she said quietly. I know, he replied. But I wanted to. Something shifted in her expressions, something emotional, something deep. She didn't say anything in response, but her eyes said enough. Still, the tension between fear and gratitude remained inside her. Like two opposite winds pushing against each other, the rest of the day passed slowly. Nurses came in and out, giving her medication, checking her vitals, offering her warm tea. She spoke a little more each time, trying to keep herself grounded. But every now and then, her eyes would drift to the doctor when he entered the room. Searching for reassurance, he never ignored her. He always spoke gently, always checked her comfort level before doing anything. He made sure she felt seen, not just as a patient, but as a person. By evening, she seemed calmer, though still thoughtful. When he entered for one last check, she looked at him with a new expression, not fear, not confusion, but something uncertain and emotional. I'm sorry I reacted the way I did this morning, she said softly. I didn't mean to sound angry. You weren't angry, he replied kindly. You were scared, and that's okay. She looked down at her hands. I don't want you to think I don't appreciate what you did. He shook his head. Lily, saving your life was the only thing on my mind yesterday. Your reaction today doesn't change that. You're allowed to feel whatever you feel. She nodded slowly, tears forming again. Thank you. For everything. You don't have to thank me, he said. Just focus on getting better. She smiled faintly. I'm trying, he returned the smile, gentle and understanding. But as he left the room, Lily lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. She felt safe now. She felt grateful, but she also felt something else, something she didn't expect, something that made her chest tighten in a new, confusing way. The day had been long, emotional, and surprising. But little did she know, it's the hardest part, the part where everything she thought she understood would be tested, were still waiting for her tomorrow. And she wasn't the only one who would feel them. The evening air felt cool against the windows of the hospital as the day slowly settled into night. Visitors had gone home, the halls had quieted, and most rooms were dim except for soft lights above beds. Yet inside the small waiting room on the 4th floor, tension hung thick in the air. The patient, who had hurried here days earlier with her frightening medical scare, now sat stiffly in a chair, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Her expression was a mixture of soft lights in the hallway, cast a warm glow as the patient sat up slightly in her bed, feeling more alert than she had in days. The night had passed more peacefully than she expected, and for the first time since arriving at the hospital, she felt a sense of calm settling into her chest. Her friend had gone home a few hours earlier to rest, promising to be back in the morning. The room felt quiet, almost too quiet, but not in a way that made her anxious. Instead, It felt like a moment of stillness she had needed for a long time. She glanced toward the window, where the morning sun had started to rise slowly. A soft orange glow touched the edge of the glass, bringing gentle warmth into the room. She took a deep breath, enjoying the feeling of clarity washing over her. The heaviness of the past few days was still present, but it felt lighter now, less sharp, less frightening. Just as she adjusted her blanket, a quiet knock tapped against the door. She looked up and saw the doctor stepping inside, holding a small tablet with her latest results. His steps were gentle, and his expression carried a calm, reassuring hope. He looked more rested than he had the night before, though the slight fatigue beneath his eyes still hinted at long hours. "Good morning," he said softly, offering her a warm smile. "Good morning," she replied. Returning the smile with a softer one of her own, he approached her bedside, pulling a chair closer, but not sitting down just yet. Instead, he looked at her with a careful expression, as if making sure she truly felt better. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. She nodded lightly. "Better. Much better, actually." "It's good to hear," he replied. He finally took a seat, crossing one leg over the other in a relaxed but professional posture. "Your overnight tests look steady. No complications. Your recovery is going smoothly." Relief washed over her face. "I'm happy to hear that." He glanced at the tablet again before setting it aside. "I want to go over a few things with you before we start planning your discharge. But first, I wanted to check on something more important." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "What's that?" "Your peace of mind," he said. "For everything that happened, I want to make sure you're not leaving with fear still sitting in the back of your mind." His tone was kind, sincere, in a way that made her feel safe enough to be honest. She hesitated for a moment, unsure how to put her feelings into words. I'm still processing everything," she admitted, "but I don't feel angry anymore, or confused." "Yesterday really helped." He nodded slowly. "That means a lot to hear. I never want a patient to walk away from a life-saving moment feeling unheard. You deserve clarity." She took a moment to look at him fully. The way he spoke, the way he listened it, surprised her. Not all doctors showed this level of patience. Some rushed through rooms, hardly making eye contact, but he seemed determined to make sure she walked out not just healed physically, but emotionally steadier too. She softly cleared her throat. "I appreciate that you took the time yesterday to go through everything with me. I know you're busy. I know you didn't have to sit with me that long." His smile warmed, gentle and genuine. Some conversations matter more than schedules. A small silence formed between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet moment that felt full, like something meaningful was hanging softly in the air. Finally, he looked toward her chart before placing it on the bedside table. "You should be able to go home tomorrow if everything stays stable today." Her eyes lit up slightly. "Tomorrow?" "Yes," he confirmed. "You're doing well? But I do want you to rest and not rush back to your full routine. Take a few days at least." She nodded. "I'll take it easy, I promise." He glanced around the room, then back at her. "Do you have someone staying with you at home, at least? For the first day or two, it's better not to be alone immediately after discharge." She paused. "My friend said he could help. He's been really supportive through this whole thing." "That's good," the doctor said with a relieved nod. "Support matters more than people realize." She smiled softly. "He's been great." For a moment, her eyes drifted to the doctor's hand, resting loosely on his knee. Something inside her stirred a growing sense of gratitude, mixed with curiosity about the man who had helped her through one of the scariest moments of her life. He rose from his chair gently. "I'll check on you again later today. If you feel any discomfort or new symptoms, just call the nurse. They'll reach me right away." "I will," she said, as he walked toward the door. She found herself speaking before she fully realized the words were forming. "Doctor," she called softly. He paused, turning around with a calm expression. "Yes." Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Thank you, again." The corners of his mouth curved upward into a soft smile.
"Oh, you're welcome."
Then he stepped out, closing the door gently behind him. When he left, the room felt a touch emptier, but but not in a lonely way. More in a thoughtful way, like something important had shifted. Even if she couldn't name it yet, she lay back against her pillows, staring up at the ceiling. The past couple of days had felt like a whirlwind of fear, confusion, relief, and now something else, something unfamiliar but warm. She wondered if he felt it too. Maybe she was imagining it, shaped by the emotions of being vulnerable and cared for. She didn't want to read too much into things, but part of her couldn't help thinking about the calm way he spoke to her, the gentle tone he used, the sincerity in his eyes, but she tried not to overthink it. Doctors were trained to be kind. Compassion didn't always mean more. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about him. A few hours passed quietly. Nurses came in and out, checking her vitals and updating her chart. She ate a small breakfast, then rested while the soft hum of hospital activity filled the hallway outside. She tried reading a magazine from the bedside table, but her mind kept drifting. In the early afternoon, her friend returned with a bag of her clothes from home and a bright smile on his face. "You look better," he said cheerfully, placing the bag on the chair. "I feel better," she replied. "That's good. I brought you some fresh things to wear tomorrow. Some snacks," he added with a grin. She laughed softly. "Thank you. I appreciate it." Sat down beside her, leaning back comfortably. "The doctor said you might go home tomorrow. That's amazing." She nodded. "Yeah, it feels strange after everything that happened." He tilted his head, studying her expression closely. "How are you feeling about it now? Everything with the doctor and the emergency?" She took a slow breath, thinking carefully. "Honestly, relieved and grateful. I understand now why he had to act so fast. I didn't at the time, but he explained everything so well yesterday." Her friend smiled knowingly. "He seems like a good guy, really patient." "He is," she said softly. Her friend raised an eyebrow in a playful, teasing way. "You say that like you mean more than just good doctor?" She rolled her eyes lightly but couldn't stop a smile from forming. "Stop, it's not like that," he chuckled. "I'm just saying. You seem very comfortable with him now." She ignored the comment, though her cheeks warmed. She's kind and calm. And he made a scary experience much easier to understand. "Ma'am," her friend hummed teasingly. She gently nudged his arm. "Don't start." He laughed and held up his hands in surrender. All right, I'm just glad you're okay." They talked for a while. And eventually he stepped out to get her a warm drink from the vending machine. A short while later, the doctor returned, knocking gently before entering. She noticed the way her friend glanced at them before quietly stepping aside, as if giving space without needing to be asked. The doctor approached the bedside again. "How are you feeling now?" "Still good," she replied. "Just tired in a normal way." "Good," he said. "That means your body is adjusting back to its usual rhythm." He reviewed her chart again, then looked at her carefully. "I wanted to check on one more thing. You mentioned yesterday that you felt overwhelmed and out of control during the emergency. Are you feeling any of that lingering?" She shook her head gently. "Not anymore."
Talking everything out helped.
"A lot, I'm glad," he said with a relieved expression. "So that was my hope." She watched him for a moment, feeling that gentle warmth again. The room felt different when he was in it, calmer, steadier. Her friend sipped quietly on his drink, pretending not to listen but clearly observing with interest. She gave him a subtle glance that said, "Don't say anything." He smirked but kept quiet. The doctor continued discussing a few more details about her recovery, then stood up again. "I'll check in once more this evening," he said, "and tomorrow morning we'll go through the discharge steps together." She nodded. "Thank you, doctor, for everything." His eyes softened. "It's my job to care for you. But thank you for trusting me." She felt her chest tighten slightly, not in fear this time, but in that warm, quiet way that hinted at something meaningful. After he left, the room felt different again. Not empty, just thoughtful. Her friend slid his chair closer and whispered playfully, "You like him?" She covered her face with her hands. "Stop," laughed softly. "I'm kidding, but also, I'm not wrong." She peeked through her fingers, embarrassed yet smiling. "Maybe a little. But it's probably just because he helped me through something scary." "That's how it starts," her friend teased. She sighed, but couldn't help laughing. "I don't even know him outside the hospital." "Maybe you will someday," he said gently. She looked toward the door where the doctor had just walked out. Maybe, she whispered. And deep down she felt something shifting, once again quiet, unexpected and undeniably real. Little did she know. Tomorrow would bring a moment she never saw coming. The morning sun filtered gently through the thin hospital curtains, painting soft lines of gold across the room. The patient opened her eyes slowly, feeling the warmth of daylight settling on her face. Today was different. Today she was going home. Her body felt lighter, her breathing easier, and her mind calmer than it had been in days. Still, a flutter of nervousness moved inside her, something she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was excitement. Maybe it was the feeling of stepping into a new chapter after such a frightening experience. Or maybe it was because of the doctor, whose quiet kindness had changed something in her heart. She sat up slowly, stretching her arms before resting her back against the pillows. Her friend had texted her earlier saying he was on the way. She smiled at her phone and set it aside. A gentle knock sounded on the door, and she looked up. The doctor stepped inside, holding a slim folder and wearing a calm, warm expression. His coat was neat, his posture relaxed, and his presence immediately eased the last bit of tension she felt. "Good morning," he said with a soft smile. "Good morning," she replied, smiling back. He walked closer to her bed, stopping at a respectful distance. "How are you feeling today?" "I feel good," she said honestly. "A little tired, but normal tired." "That's expected," he replied. "Your body has been through a lot, but you're recovering well." He opened the folder and took out a few papers. "These are your discharge instructions. I'll go through them with you. But I also want to talk about a couple of things first, just to make sure you're fully prepared before leaving." She nodded, listening attentively. He sat down in the chair beside her bed, the same one he had used during many of their conversations. "First, you'll need to rest for the next few days. No heavy activity, no rushing back into your routine. Your friend mentioned he would help you at home, which is good." She nodded again. "He'll be with me. I won't be alone. It's important," the doctor said, relief in his voice. "Second, keep track of your symptoms. If anything feels unusual, dizziness, sharp pain, trouble breathing, you need to come back right away." "I understand," she said. He paused before continuing, his tone softer now. "And one more thing, emotionally. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, or if fear comes back unexpectedly, that's normal too. What you went through was intense. I want you to know that you're not expected to be perfectly fine right away." His words landed gently, almost like a cushion for her feelings. She breathed out slowly. "I appreciate that. I really do." A small silence followed. Not stiff, but thoughtful. He closed the folder gently, resting it on his lap. "You've handled this with a lot of strength," he said, "even when it felt overwhelming." She looked down at her hands, a slight warmth rising to her cheeks. "I didn't feel strong at all." "You were," he said gently. "Being scared doesn't mean you were weak. You asked questions, you tried to understand, and you stayed honest about your feelings. That takes strength." Her chest tightened slightly, not in fear, but in that gentle way that comes when someone speaks to your heart more than your mind. "Thank you," she whispered. He stood up slowly, picking up the folder again. "Your friend should be here soon. I'll come back so we can finish the final paperwork together, and then you'll be all set." "Yeah." She nodded. "Okay." He gave her one more warm smile before leaving the room, as the door closed behind him. She exhaled deeply, sinking into the pillows. She ran her fingers through her hair, trying to steady the mix of emotions swirling inside her. She was grateful, relieved, hopefully on something else she wasn't ready to name. A few minutes later, her friend arrived with a cheerful smile and a bag of her clothes. "Ready to go home?" he asked as he set the bag on the chair. "Almost," she said. "The doctor's coming back to finish the paperwork." Her friend sat beside her. "So, how are you feeling?" "Really feeling?" She hesitated. "Better than yesterday, and better than the day before that." He nodded slowly, studying her expression. "You look different, relaxed, lighter." She gave a soft laugh. "I feel that way," he added with a teasing smirk. "Maybe a little attached to a certain doctor." She groaned quietly, covering her face with her hands. "Please, not this again." He laughed. "I'm just saying you to talk like you've known each other for years." She dropped her hands and sighed. "He's just easy to talk to, kind, calm, and he explains everything in a way that makes sense." Her friend raised an eyebrow. "And he makes you smile without trying?" She stared at him, cheeks warming again. "Maybe, but he's a doctor. He talks to people every day. It doesn't mean anything more." Her friend leaned back. "Maybe, but sometimes it does." Before she could reply, another knock came at the door. The doctor stepped inside again, holding a pen and the final discharge papers. Her friend quickly stood up, giving space. "All right," the doctor said warmly. "Ready to go through the last part?" "Ready," she said. He walked her through each section carefully, making sure she understood every detail. He didn't rush, didn't skim over anything, and stayed patient with each question she asked. When they were done, he looked at her with a gentle expression. "That's it. You're officially cleared to go home." She felt a wave of relief and excitement wash over her. "Thank you so much. You're welcome," he replied. "But before you leave, there's something I want to say." Her breath hitched slightly. "Okay." He rested his hands lightly on the folder, almost as if grounding himself before speaking. "I know you've been through a lot these past few days," he began. "You handled everything with honesty and strength, and I just wanted to say that it was truly meaningful to help you through it." She swallowed softly. Something in his tone felt deeper than simple professional kindness. "I appreciate everything you've done," she said quietly. "More than you know." His eyes lingered on hers for a moment longer than usual. It wasn't unprofessional. It wasn't crossing a boundary. It was simply human, warm, sincere, and full of something unspoken. Then he stepped back just slightly, as if catching himself. "If you need anything, or if you feel uncertain about your recovery, don't hesitate to reach out. You have full permission to call the hospital and ask for me directly." Her heart fluttered. "I will." "Thank you." Her friend gave her a knowing smile from the corner of the room. But he stayed respectfully quiet. The doctor offered her one last gentle nod. "Take care of yourself, and take things slow." "I will," she whispered. He turned and walked toward the door, pausing just before opening it. Without looking back, he said softly, "I'm glad you're okay." Then he left. She sat there for a moment, staring at the door long after it had closed. Her friend placed a hand on her arm. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her breath felt a little unsteady. "Yeah, I'm okay." But her mind was full of everything that had happened, everything she felt, everything that had changed. They gathered her things, and her friend helped her into her shoes. As they walked out of the room, she looked down the hallway where the doctor had disappeared minutes earlier. For a brief moment, she wondered if their paths would cross again, not as doctor and patient, but as two people who shared something quiet and unexpected. As they reached the elevator, her friend nudged her gently. "You know, life has a funny way of bringing people together." She looked at him, then back at the hallway. "Maybe," she said softly, "maybe it does." The elevator doors slid open. She stepped inside, taking one last look at the place where fear had turned into clarity, where confusion had turned into understanding, and where something deeper had quietly taken root. As the doors closed, she couldn't help the small smile forming on her lips. Her life was moving forward again, steady, hopeful and full of possibilities she had never expected. And though she didn't know what the future held, one thing was certain. This experience had changed her. And maybe, just maybe, it had changed the doctor too.